Yeah, my mic's on. Okay. Okay. Hey, but going back in, if you're here to speak tonight, you will be allowed to speak, at the time, we call whatever you're here to hear. This, you'll be recognized and you'll come up, state your name and, address for the record. But, I'm gonna take a roll call. Mr. Bailey,
Present.
Mr. Huffine,
Here.
Chair Ward is here, Ms. Wooten,
Here.
Mr. Docker,
Here.
Mr. Young.
Here.
Thank you. Please stand for the pledge of allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Everybody had an opportunity to read the, minutes from last month? If so, I'll entertain a motion.
So move.
Do I hear a
We-
second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. All right, Mr. Planner, let's bring up, old business, 6A.
Yes, sir. It's kind of running on from last month in our discussion surrounding short-term rentals / boarding houses. It's come from a directive of city council for staff to review and include definitions for both short-term rentals and boarding homes inside the development ordinance. Staff has defined them and included them in the table of permitted uses and provided use-specific notes that add an extra layer of requirements for these uses. That's essentially all with the staff report. I know we talked about it last month and tried to schedule some stuff in regards with meetings with members of the League of Municipalities, et cetera. Somebody to give us a broader answer in regards to enforcement of these types of boarding houses. I believe everybody was relatively okay with the short-term rental piece of it, but the boarding houses, I think, was a little bit of a holdup in regards to how exactly, if we do allow these things inside of our city, how do you enforce those that don't go through the prior or the proper permitting process? And Mr. Wooten, you were asking prior to about setting something up. The day I was essentially out for 2 weeks and didn't get an opportunity to, but did put in a call to the member of the League Municipality, one of the attorneys there. He called while I was out and spoke with Evan and gave him a little bit of rundown and asked us to speak with a representative from Greensboro, who we gathered some of our information from in regards to the definitions and use types of these boarding homes. But haven't specifically got a chance to talk with him either. And also put in requests to members of the School of Government. Haven't heard anything back from them either. And of course, being out for so long, had a lot to come back into. So it didn't get my immediate full attention when I came back, but I did go through a couple of different things and gather some notes. But of course, like to open up the discussion back to you all in regards to how we kind of want to move forward with this. I think the big topic of discussion is, of course, how are we going to enforce these things? It's one thing if they come through and get their permit approval, but what about those that are operating without any permit approval? What type of legal action can we take in regards to going inside, if that's even possible, and determining whether these are a use of the boarding house or not? So like I said, I'll kind of open discussion up for whatever questions or anything that you all may have. I talked a little bit about it with Chair Ward prior to the meeting, but we can kind of open that discussion up. So a couple of the notes that I have that could be added into these things, and I didn't change anything inside of the packet that you all got. But there's things that I've noted and saw through some of the other ordinances as well. And that even in some boarding home instances that are these long terms, they do require like an owner or manager to live on the premise inside of there as well. One topic is that rent is paid to the owner of the land and the home specifically. So if you were to sublet it to somebody and they were to sublet it to somebody else, it would kind of fall in that category. But like I said, it's kind of all going back to how exactly can we gather these items, probable cause, these things along those lines. And so that's about all that I have right now, unfortunately, in that regard. But I'm definitely down to kind of bounce some things around with you all while we got some time. So.
Had some questions for Mr. Wood.
Well, he pretty well answered the questions that I have.
Cameron, I'm still, we had a brief conversation before we got started again.
Yes, sir.
And my biggest thing is that anyone that's wanting to comply with the ordinance is going to come down and apply for their permit.
Mhm.
But the ones that don't want to comply are not going to come get their permit. So then my question's always been, and it still is today, is how are we going to enforce it?
Yes, sir.
And I threw this scenario to you before Mr. Wooten came in tonight, and we didn't get to talk about it, but let's talk about it now. I come to town, I rent a house over here on Hampton Road that's a 6,000 square foot house, and I pay the owner of the house for the lease, so I lease it.
Mhm.
And then 5 of my buddies come to town, and we all decide we're going to go to Alamance Community College and get a degree, and we're going to live together over there in this house, and I'm going to charge each one of my buddies rent. Is that classified as a boarding house?
It depends on what the definition is, I guess, for it. So like I said, when you're throwing in, an aspect of the related individuals, if you classify that as a specific number, like 4 or more, or more than 4, I guess, could be a classification where the 4 people that may be living there that are not related wouldn't be classified, but if it goes over that 4, it could be, but of course, it really depends on whatever lists inside there. And then the whole aspect, as I mentioned, with the rent is to be paid to the owner. If you yourself, you say you're the owner or you're subleasing it from the owner?
I'm gonna be the leasee. I'm gonna lease it from the owner, and I'm
Okay.
gonna be the only one on the lease, and I may disclose to the owner that I'm gonna have a couple people living there, and I may not.
Yeah. And I think in that instance, if you do take it with that rent is to be paid by the owner, you could take into an additional, I guess, step of it and be like each room rent is to be paid directly to the owner. So they have to classify, I guess, however many rooms in the home, then you need that amount of rent per room coming to the owner, not necessarily you leasing it to people under you. But like I said, it's still, how do we get access to all these documents? And that's the question, I guess, that we really can't answer.
Right. I don't want to see us write, text amendments and put things into our development ordinances and stuff that has something that prevents us from enforcing it.
Mhm.
So before we do that, I want to get to how we're going to enforce it. And the scenario that I was throwing out to you is not the typical boarding house. A typical boarding house is each individual room typically pays the owner for that room.
Mhm.
Not one person collects all the money and gives it to the owner. So that's what a typical boarding house is. But the enforcement part is the biggest thing and the hurdle that I can't get over here when we start limiting people to a house that's big enough to occupy 5 people. And then we say, whoa, just because you got 5 people now, you might fall in the definition of a boarding house. Well, how are we going to prove that unless they come out and say that, number one? We can get all the anonymous complaints that we want, and we can go investigate, and we go knock on the door, and the guy says, no, I rent the house myself. I rent it from Mr. Wooten here, and I pay Mr. Wooten $1,000 a month.
Mhm.
And you go talk to Mr. Wooten, and that's what Mr. Wooten tells you, then we haven't got over that hump to get to the boarding house yet, because 5 people are living there.
Mhm.
So we got to figure that out. Can we request that next month, let's hold it over another month if there's consensus from the board here. And I want staff attorneys here.
Okay, sure.
And if they're not available, if potentially we might to see if we could get an outside attorney that handles real estate or something that they could help us through this process, because there's got to be a way that's enforceable. I know Greensboro's got the ordinance. I know Charlotte's got it, Raleigh's got it, Hillsborough got it, Chapel Hill's got it. But when you start putting that number on there, are we getting in the gray area, number one,
Mhm.
that city's going to be exposed to liability for constitutional issues? You telling me I can't have 5 of my friends over here staying in my house and, per our definition, if that's what it is at the
For sure.
time. I just want to get ahead of that.
Yeah, no, I completely understand. And if y'all want to move it along another month, I don't think that'd be much of an issue either. I think, the goal of a lot of this, and I guess unfortunately was due to the timing of a lot of this, was to get something moved forward. And I'm more than happy to look into it and reach out to either Bob or Brian to come and see if they will attend, and kind of work through some of this stuff with us, and also talk with them in the meantime to kind of get a game plan moving forward, and also maybe get some feedback from some of the other people that we've reached out to. But like I said, I think a lot of this was just unfortunate timing, unfortunately. But
Yes.
go ahead. Yes, sir, Mr. Young.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
do you know how many boarding houses we have in Graham right now?
It's, no, sir. Unfortunately, it's the same kind of aspect of we don't have, uh, if we have an ordinance written right now or not, there's still a problem of enforcement. If somebody were to be operating a boarding house, how exactly will we enforce a violation upon them? It's the same question we're trying to answer here
Yeah.
tonight. And I think, the whole reason of kind of pushing this language back and is to make sure that whenever this stuff does get passed, that we do have an enforcement avenue found out. So we're not just, to Mr. Chair Ward's point, is we're passing anything just to pass it, right?
Okay.
So we're actually, I guess, benefiting from what's going inside of the text amendments.
Okay, and this might be a stupid question. But is there zoning where you can't have a boarding house? I mean, obviously, industrial and all that, but is there like any residential areas where a boarding house would not be permitted?
So yes, sir. If you, I kind of listed out stuff in the agenda packet on the table of permitted uses. So
Okay,
if if council were to approve this ordinance, it's written right now that we'd only approve boarding houses in the R9, R7, and RG zoning district as a special use permit.
Okay,
And so that's where they would have to come and petition you all and city council to even have approval to have these. So if you were operating a boarding house, quote unquote, a boarding house, however we would define them inside the R18, R15, R12, RMF, any of the other districts that I haven't listed out, that would be in violation of our zoning ordinance. But to everybody's point, it's like, okay, we can't really send a notice of violation out if we don't have probable cause that it's a violation.
yeah,
It's, I guess, hearsay. I guess if somebody were to call and complain that something's going on inside, how do we know what's going on inside without going inside of there?
Yeah.
So,
okay, thank you.
yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for Cameron. So on the subsequent page where it's listed out the smaller zonings, there are X's in those. X's would typically be they're permitted in that district.
Yes, sir.
So does that mean they're scratched from that district? And the only way to approve a boarding home is a special use permit in the three that you have an S?
That's correct. Yes, sir. So all the other ones would not be permitted inside those areas.
So the yellow on the X's mean that that's gone. That's going to be stricken from the table of permitted uses.
Where do you see yellow on the X's? Yeah.
So you got a subsequent page in there? That's for it.
Page 56.
Those are the short-term rentals? Is that where?
Yeah.
Sorry. So it's only in the three with the S's for special use permit?
Yes, sir. So this is what it would look like if it were be updated. The highlighted area is those three zoning classifications would be the only place where you could get a boarding house. So say these brand new subdivisions that are coming through, even in the conditional residential, conditional, all the other stuff would not be able to put any inside of there. None in the R18, R12. This is strictly for the denser areas inside the city.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
I'm in agreement with Chair Ward at this point. I would suggest that we table this until next month, till we get a little bit more information.
Yes, sir.
Specifically, I'd like to see the text amendment be a little bit more specific. Something that is easy enough for people to understand, but not so much that we're hitting constitutionality issues, and something that we can enforce.
For sure.
Mr. Doc?
Cameron, for those that are operating a boarding house now, they would be grandfathered in, or they'd have to come in and get permitted.
See, technically, right now, boarding houses aren't necessarily an approvable use. Since they're not listed inside of the development ordinance, they're viewed as in violation, essentially. If they're not listed inside of there and they're operating, then it'd be the same as if they have one in the blank R18 spaces. It's just, like I said, somebody could say that they have a boarding house, but it's still the enforcement aspect of it right now as it would be if we pass it as is, of course, not with the amendments to it. But it's just tough to gather whether or not they're operating one or not. Some people can say they can file police reports. It's just how do you get inside of there and gets determined, because these aren't the ones that are being advertised online necessarily on like your Airbnb, people renting out rooms inside of their house. That's a little bit different. These are more of the long-term rentals, longer than 90 days, I think it has specifically in there. And those aren't always overly advertised online. So it's hard to kind of decide what's considered to be a boarding house. And of course, it comes into play. If we don't have a definition for boarding house, what is exactly considered one? If we don't have a occupancy limit for it, So it's just a wide open gray area right now until we get something passed.
I know in Burlington, they're in litigation right now over boarding houses. And originally, the boarding houses over there operated from week to week. You could rent it by the week.
Mhm.
And since Burlington didn't have an ordinance at the time, and has since enacted a ordinance, now they've changed it to the short-term rental, so it's not called a boarding house. They get a new contract every 30 days.
Mhm.
So that's something that we need to consider in our language as we're moving forward. If we do come to something here, they may tell you more than they'll tell me. I'm hearing it from the other side, from actually the people who own the boarding house and their attorneys
Mhm.
that represent them.
Yeah, and it might help to have, sorry to interrupt, Mr., I guess Ward's expertise in that, because I'm sure he's
He's-
dealt with a lot of it too.
He's
so,
dealt with a lot of it.
um,
And then my second question also, Cameron, would be would there be a cost if we did approve a text amendment? Would it be a cost for someone to come down here and tell you that, hey, I've got a boarding house, I want to run a boarding house, are you going to charge?
Like, I don't think you can. Like a licensing fee, of course, they'd have to pay for their special use permit application, everything along those lines. But I know, and it might not have been the fee part of it in Wilmington. Maybe it was just like the reoccurring aspect of it. I think we could assess one, just for the annual or just a single time. But also, of course, there's the aspect of potentially having like an annual inspection from the fire and building code department. Whether that be something that be assessed or not, I think that's another question on the legality side based on all the stuff that's happened in Wilmington. But I know that was more specific to short-term rentals.
No, but I think you brought up a good point there that that's some language that does need to be in there if we
Mhm.
get that far to have an inspection once a year
Yeah, and that's
or minimums.
a couple of the other things that I had jotted down, but I knew we were probably gonna have to figure some of this stuff out as well.
So as far as a special use permit, then are you going to require them to come in with drawings? And I mean, that's stuff I want to get out on the table and get it all talked about it. So
I think in this instance, you more than likely would at least have to have some type of site plan, even because it may be the specific use, but and this may be contradicting to some previous things, but when you're looking at the aspect of we're requiring say we require 8 parking spot um, per bedroom or 2 per bedroom, or however you want to look at it, that would have to be kind of shown and laid out. But I don't think that there would be anything outside of that that would necessarily require it. There wouldn't be any landscaping, anything along those lines, unless they could specifically, or we could tell from the naked eye that they're going to have enough parking based on the bedrooms that are out there. Or they have to add in, I guess, extra concrete through there to adhere to the parking requirements. That may be something that they'd have to show, so.
thank you. Any further? I'd like to make a motion that we table this to next month's meeting and request that city staff attorneys are here, in present. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Yes, sir. Thank you all.
Okay, Cameron, let's go to new business number 7A.
Yes, sir. So this is a request to rezone 4.7 acres of property from I-1 light industrial and RG general residential to CR conditional residential for the purpose of constructing around 53 townhomes. The site plans to connect public roadways, water and sewer through the existing utilities surrounding the property. The sewer connection will have to be acquired via easement that the TRC has asked to list on the plans as required prior to the acceptance of TRC approval. The property is fully inside of the industrial/warehousing future land use zone. The future land use plan mentions nothing about residential uses inside of them and suggests the area should be made up of large 1- and 2-story industrial buildings with easy access to I-85 and I-40. The site falls under the 5-acre threshold for requiring open space, but it has been provided on the set of plans. All lots will have 2 driveway parking spaces and 1 garage parking spaces based on what the updated plan showed. And the project does meet the RMF density listed in section 10.245 of the City of Graham Development Ordinance. That's based on the minimum lot area needed to construct X amount of homes, essentially. So there's not a specific density requirement inside of the industrial/warehousing zone because it's essentially, of course, meant for industrial/warehousing. And they have listed out some conditions that they are requesting on the property. Let's see if I can get those. I think it's a reduced, I can't even see it on this paper. So minimum building setbacks, they have like a 20-foot lot width, 20-foot front building setback, 6-foot side building setback, 12-foot corner adjacent to street, 15-foot rear building setback, 12 feet of separation, a modification to the minimum yard width, that's a 10-foot type D, planter yard for front side abutting street, rear yard depth, all the kind of surrounding areas. And they are going to be installing a 5-foot wide concrete sidewalk along the project frontage of Hanover, as well inside of the development on one side. The developer shall provide active open space near the Hanover Road connection and a minimum area of 5,000 square feet. And they have listed some potential amenities, include a dog park, play lawn, picnic tables, benches, and enhanced landscaping in that specific area. And that's essentially about everything. I'm more than happy to kind of answer any questions that you all have in that regard.
All right, Cameron, at this time, I'm going to request that I be recused from this hearing here. Mr. White, one of the owners here, is involved with a business out of Raleigh that I have a financial gain in.
Yes, sir.
And so I would request to be recused from the hearing.
We need a motion to,
So somebody will call for one, and then essentially everybody will say, get a second, and then all in favor, same as kind of everything.
right, I'd like to entertain a motion at this time that we allow our Chair Ward to recuse himself from this discussion.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. The motion passes.
You're up, Mr. Wooten.
All right.
What a spot.
We'll go ahead and open public comment for this at this time.
Will you call a motion to open it up? I'm sorry.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion. We open up public discussion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? And let's get to it. Motion passes. All right, if you, pardon?
Are we gonna have a time limit on it? 3 minutes?
I can pull one up if you want me to. And then typically it's like 3 minutes,
Just 3
correct?
minutes, yes.
Yes, sir.
All right, do we have the petitioners here with us tonight?
That's,
The main petitioners.
that's y'all applicants.
Public comment will be in just a few moments, folks. We'll get to you shortly. Petitioners, present. If you would, state your name and address for the record.
Brennan Wyatt, 3132 Brook Valley Court, Mebane, North Carolina.
Okay,
Yes, David Wyatt at 3132 Brook Valley Court, Mebane also.
If you guys, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Thanks for having us. I just want to do a brief introduction before we start. Again, Brennan Wyatt, also a local realtor. I do residential and commercial real estate and development as well. And our team is comprised of 2 people, father and son, both born and raised in Mebane, North Carolina. I'll let David introduce himself and then we'll introduce our engineer. Over here.
Yeah, sure.
thank you.
There again, thanks for having us. And Chair Board over here, thank you. So there again, David Wyatt, I've been here, born and raised Alamance County. Gosh, I live in Mebane, right in the Hawk Hills community now. Also in the local banking community. I've been banking almost 30 years in this market. I currently work with Fidelity Bank in Mebane, and I'm on the commercial side of it. So even had the privilege to work with the city of Graham. Last year, we helped with the purchase of the new ladder truck with Megan, and that worked out good with Chief Cole. So that was nice. So that's just a long time connection here to community. So thank you for having us.
I'll introduce our engineer, Sam Nye, if he wants to join us for specific questions, if that's okay. Also here is the owner of our real estate firm, just where I work at, Sean Smith. He's the owner of Society Real Estate.
Go ahead and state your name and address for the
record,
record.
Sam Nye, it's 1111 Oberlin Road, Raleigh. I'm the civil engineer on the project.
I also have some handouts of the site plan, the renderings, and a brief information sheet about us, if it's okay to distribute handouts to you guys.
Go
Oh,
ahead.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you. And this is better.
And then if you guys want to take a brief moment to look over it, and then we're open for any questions that you may have. Oh, sorry. Okay.
Would you care to tell us a little bit about the project, why you're doing
Absolutely.
it, what you think?
Yep.
it'll Bring to the neighborhood?
Absolutely.
Just
So it is family land. So we're buying it from our family. And what we're really trying to do is just provide more housing and ownership opportunities to Alamance County. So currently it's a split zoning. It's a light industrial and a general residential RG zoning. RG is going to allow for a lot of different uses. So per the city's request, we're trying to do a conditional RMF zoning specifically for townhomes. That way it's set just for that. We have 53 townhouses proposed so far. It's going to be mixed. We're going to have some that are going to be 20 by 40, and then we're going to have some that are going to be 20 by 42. And the reason behind that is the land pinches in the middle. So we want to have adequate backyards for people to enjoy. We have our stormwater pond that meets so far the UDO requirements. We have a turnaround lane for fire and public trash pickup. We are proposing a public road. We have guest parking. And then we realized that for 3-bedroom houses, it was going to be 2 parking spaces required. So we went above and beyond and we added 3 per dwelling unit. We have sidewalks on Hanover and Jeffries. And then we also are adding some proposed green space. We're going to do a mix of probably open green space and a dog park. And it's to be determined as to what specifically we do. So that's a general overview. We have more specific notes on the right side of the site plan that are going to detail more of our conditions, our setbacks, and what we're doing specifically. If you guys have any questions,
Gentlemen, I'll
please let us
open it-
know.
Open it up to the board, questions? Go for it.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for staff.
Yes, sir.
Cameron, has this been through TRC and received TRC's endorsement?
Yes, sir. It has.
In the submittal application for conditional use zoning, were all of the items on the site plan, conditional use site plan addressed?
In what regard, I guess?
Conditional zoning application for rezoning, conditional rezoning. Site plan review application must be attached to this application for conditional rezoning. See sheet 2.
I definitely have that on file. I mean, if you would like me to pull it up, I have it.
Yeah, let's look at that if you don't mind.
Okay.
I'm sorry, the city council has asked us specifically to look at items before they see it. So in an effort to be efficient and to do what they've asked us to do, that's the reason I'm bringing these topics up.
While I look for this, do y'all have any more specific questions for anybody or anything I can answer?
I have a question. Have you, your guys done any, traffic count on what the traffic count is right now on the area?
Gonna revert to our engineer.
Hey, thank you. This site is below that requirement where you would have to do a TIA. So we haven't done any traffic counts on any of the roads. My understanding is based on the UDO that it's not a big enough generator to trip that.
Not yet.
Yes.
Okay.
And so, and to this point, NCDOT is a part of the technical review committee. And I believe are both
Chuck.
of these, or is at least Hanover Road is NCDOT maintained, correct? And they didn't require the number of units and trip counts that were going through development didn't request a TIA on their behalf. And there's nothing inside the city of Graham's development ordinance that would trigger a TIA for this type of development either.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned 53 proposed thus far. Is
Yes,
there a phase 2, 3, and 4 out there that we don't know about at this time?
There is not.
Cameron, do you have that document up?
I have the application for rezoning and conditional rezoning. I'm looking through my email because I believe I have one. I may have the hard copy in my office in the file that I have, but I'm trying to locate it at the moment.
Bailey, do you have any questions?
The only question I have is, I know there was some proposal for like a dog park or a play area. Anything specific though yet? Or is it just general for right now?
Yeah, nothing specific. It's general. We are open to suggestions of what you guys have if you've seen, as a positive impact in the past. And we'll also take into consideration what council wants, but we're thinking probably a dog park and an open playing field we anticipate it to be a lot of families here,
Uh-huh.
especially since there's going to be a school next door. So we're open to suggestions, but to answer your question, nothing specific yet.
Just to refresh my memory, what school is that? I'm sorry.
No, this
That-
is,
The question is directed to the person at the podium. We'll take public comment in just a few minutes. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
sorry, it is Cummings High School
Thank you.
across the street. Yes,
Thank
sir.
you. Couldn't remember.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then we've also addressed in the TRC meeting doing a crosswalk. So that would be implemented if somebody were walking across, they would have that as well.
Thank you. That was going to be.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions from the board at this point?
Cameron, let me see if I can help you in just a minute. Drawing number exhibit 1.0, is that the only plan that was submitted for TRC review? Or are there other plan sheets in the set that we are not able to see?
I think the only thing that I have, there's I can get it pulled up. There's only this one, and I think it's the easement sheet as well that's shown for the potential sewer connection. I think that's about it.
Yes, sir. Hey, just one sheet
Okay,
for the, yes, sir.
thank you. Cameron, the reason I asked you the specifics about the site plan checklist items and that the city council has directed both staff, the technical review committee, and the planning board to critically evaluate and prepare a recommendation based on a complete submittal. Just upon my review, there are 15 to 20 items that are not included on the plan that are required for the site plan checklist compliance. And in an effort of fairness and completeness, I would just like an explanation of why these items are missing, what the development plans to do with each specific item. In order to complete the TRC review, I think that these would thoroughly need to be looked at by the staff.
Mhm.
And
Can you give me one specific that you think would benefit the discussion here tonight?
item 2, title block and data, owner's name and address with daytime phone number is missing from the site plan. Item 3, daytime name, address, daytime phone number, if different from the owner of the developer. Item 4, site location, including the address. Following the page, zoning and overlay districts in the area, proposed land use on the property and existing land use on adjacent properties, tax map, block, and lot numbers missing, the seal of the licensed development professional is missing. That's only on the first sheet and title block information.
That's on the sheet though, isn't it? The
No,
seal
sir.
of it?
The seal is a corporate seal, not the individual engineer with a signature. So that is just the one item on the first of the title block and data. In the subsequent sections, planimetric, landscaping, transportation, parking, utilities, stormwater control buffers, and floodplains, there's just an absence of information that I know in the past is necessary for TRC complete review.
I mean, it's
And
not
without
a
that-
full, complete review, right? So we still have to go through the construction documents and get a lot of this stuff sorted out. But this did receive the blessing to move forward. I mean, you mentioned stuff about planning yards. It's shown in here. All the water line, sewer line connections are shown. Stormwater control measurement that has been looked at and reviewed by the City of Graham's Technical Review Committee has been, if you feel that it's the necessary holdup for these items that are specifically dealt with for small, minor areas of phone numbers, things along those lines, then I mean, you
Well,
can-
then let me be very specific. On a
Yes, sir.
very important item that it is obviously missing from the drawing sheet. Drawing number EX 1.0, stormwater control, stream buffers and floodplains. Item 1, location and type of existing and proposed stormwater controls, including locations of inlets. That's the first item under the stormwater item. And
like curb inlets that would catch
the,
and then run into the stormwater. So we've
unfortunately,
had very extensive discussion of that with the TRC. And I think us and
so we're
the-
missing the sheets.
no,
So this is just a rezoning plan. It's not a site plan submittal, right?
I understand that.
Right, so
What I see is a site plan checklist for conditional rezonings. I'll be glad to show it to you. Because we're not doing what we're being asked to do.
I believe if that's how you feel, like I said, I think we've had multiple discussions inside of the Technical Review Commission or Technical Review Committee in regards to these curb inlets. And it is be well known that the grates and everything inside of there do not need to be located inside the driveways. You know, some of this stuff essentially handled inside of the construction drawing aspect of it. I don't think that it really messes with the integrity of the overall plan. I think they provided everything that we need to be reviewed tonight, but if you believe that they're not meeting the requirements of it, I mean, they're showing where the location of the stormwater pond is at and everything else is taken into consideration. I don't know if there's any floodplain in this area, so.
Mr. Chairman, I'll stop.
Thank you. Do we have any other further questions from the board at this time?
can I respond to that or?
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. This is really typical for what we do in a lot of places for a rezoning effort, right? So there's a lot of money that goes into all the things that you guys have been asked to, that checklist. There's, months and months worth of work that would go into that. And there's really no point to do all of that work before at a rezoning level. Typically you do a rezoning and then either site and construction or subdivision, but my experience, we've never done that level of detail at a rezoning here.
Mr. Huffines' point, I mean, it is listed inside of there, but this went through 2 or 3 rounds of the technical review committee.
Two rounds.
And we took a look at it and felt it was good enough to move on. If the curb inlets, like I said, they were discussed, if that's a point of conversation. And I think us as the city and the developers know that. I think the big concern is always that they're inside of the driveways. Is that kind of where your comments were going towards, Mr. Huffine, or is it just specifically showing them on the plans to show how they're gonna go towards the pond at least?
Mr. Chairman, I've got a question for staff.
Yes, sir.
Cameron, assuming that this has received the blessing of the technical review committee.
Mhm.
That's all I need.
Gentlemen, thank you. We're going to open up the comments to anyone else who might like to.
I have
I'm
one
sorry.
more, I have one more
All right,
question.
go ahead.
This land was family land?
Yes, sir.
So it's been in your family for how long?
Do you know how long it's been?
It's actually
Passed.
probably passed through probably 40, 50 years.
Yeah, if not more.
Thank you.
I'd also like to make one one more comment. I think it was Cameron or Mr. Wooten was talking about the potential floodplains. It's not in a floodplain, and we also did a wetland and stream delineation study per the city's request, even though it was no evidence of any streams or wetlands. So we did do that as well, along with the boundary survey.
Gentlemen, you can have your seat. Just,
Thank you.
we may need you for questions in a few moments. I'd like to open it up to anyone else who might like to comment on this. If you would raise your hand, I'll call on you. You'll need to come up to the podium, state your name and address for the record.
This deer is 92 years old. She can't stand up.
Yeah, can I say from here, I have silence from.
We'll need to get your,
I can't hear y'all either, so.
and we'll need to
Can I
get it,
speak from here?
we'll need to get you into the microphone for the record.
All I'm fixing to tell you is the property was our property, was probably 97, I'm 92, so that, my father had that property years before I was born. Tom Hanford bought it, and the people that own it now inherited it.
What's your name and address, ma'am?
So
Can you-
you asked about the property being in a family, I'm just telling you.
And what's your address?
East Tennessee.
Cameron, can you repeat that for the record, please?
I heard 201 East Hanover Road, and your name was
Peggy.
again? Peggy
Jeffries.
Jeffries Tier. Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak to this? Yes, sir.
Billy Stallings. I just retired from the city September 1st after 11 years. I didn't plan on coming down here to
What's your address, sir?
213 East Hanover Road, Graham.
Thank you, sir.
I didn't come to, this is not the way I intended on spending my retirement, fighting for my property rights, my property tax value, my property value. You're trying to squeeze up to 2,000 people in 4.5 acres. You're asking for trouble. You have a former officer right here, he ought to tell you. 2,000, up to 2,000 people in 4.5 acres. 53 townhomes, that's unacceptable. You got them coming 10 feet off my property, front and back, 10 to 15 feet. City ordinance is 25 feet. My sister worked for the city in planning and zoning for 20 years. I know what the zoning issues are. There is no storm water within 10 feet of my property. There's no way they can treat it. They ain't gonna treat stormwater anyway. They're gonna send it to a retention pond. 10 feet off my property, it's gonna go into my land. As far as planting bushes 5 foot off the property line, that's giving their tenants a place to go have their dogs relieve themselves and not pick up their dog poop. And that will be run in my land. That's stormwater runoff onto my land. I lived in a townhouse for 4.5 months. I witnessed it all, from big dogs leaving horse piles to chihuahuas leaving little marks. Nobody would pick it up. I've seen it. It's gonna happen over here. Look at the area you're gonna put it in. Just think 53 homes, 10 foot off my property. You got 7 homes, 10 to 15 feet off my property. Where's my privacy? Where's their tenants' privacy? There is none. Okay? I'm not cleaning up anybody's dog poop. I'm not gonna have it thrown on my yard. It's not gonna be washed into my yard by the stormwater. I pay the stormwater fees just like everybody else. I've had numerous conversations with Cameron. I've got 2 answers from 2 different employees up here. And, they need to get together and find out what's going on. But, I do have a speech written out, but I think I've covered about everything except ample parking is always an issue in these places. If you got 4 people living there and 2 of them teenagers and 2 adults, there's gonna be 4 cars there. So they're not gonna have anywhere to park. I witnessed that myself because I lived in a town home for 4.5 months. I didn't like it. I got out. Okay, I was engaged. I said, screw this, I'm out. I'm asking the planning board to move it back to 25 feet, along my property and Miss Tier's property. Anybody else that don't speak up tonight, that's on them. But I don't want anybody living 10 feet off my land. I don't think you guys would want it. I certainly don't. And, actually, they didn't buy enough land for 53 townhomes. They need some more land. They should have bought the Copeland's land that was for sale. I've been down here to fight the Copeland's plans for their cell phone tower. They took it to court. The judge made them move it back to the 150-foot mark. They wanted it 50 feet off of my property. That didn't happen. I would just like to ask you guys to please, 25 foot. You know, anybody else that wants to speak up, they can speak up for themselves. I'm speaking up for me and Miss Tier. She asked me to do it. That's what I'm doing. But,
May I ask you a question?
yes, sir, please do.
Did I understand you to say 2,000 people?
Up to 2,000, if you got 53 homes, they said they're gonna have families there. I'm going on a 4-family home, would be over 2,000 people there, yes, sir.
I'm
53, 50 times
53
4
townhomes. That
Yeah.
would be like
times 4,
40 people. That's 200. You'd have to
200.
have 40 people in each townhome. What for? Are you really meaning like 4 people in a townhome?
Yeah, that's what I said,
There's 200, not
200.
2,000.
Okay.
Sorry, just wanted to make sure I wasn't hearing.
Okay,
something.
well, maybe I messed up there, yeah. My
No-
math ain't
no
too
problem.
good, but, yeah,
problem.
I did work for the city, so. But, you know,
Certainly understand.
our remarks could change the, planning of it, and I'm just here to ask you to be fair to me, the existing taxpayers, the existing neighbors. We want our privacy. We want y'all don't want nothing shoved in down y'all's backyard or front yard. They're wanting to do it in my front yard and my backyard. No, that ain't gonna happen. I won't be a good neighbor, I'll tell you that. I'm not a good neighbor. I'm being honest with you, okay? I'm good neighbors with Miss Tier and the people who live across, Buzz and Gene Aldred, but, other than that, gentlemen, I apologize for interrupting you guys a while ago. I was just trying to correct, but, look, they don't even know what town they're in, okay? He's talking about, there's a school right across the street. That's in Burlington, guys. That's Broadview Middle School, Cummins High School. These people are gonna send people to Graham High School, and then you're gonna have to build another school because there's nobody that wants to go to Graham. Y'all know that. We know that. Jerry Peterman took himself to the school board meeting to ask them to do something. And he was okaying all these housing projects. So you know what I'm saying? You know, hey, they don't get it.
Thank you very much for your comments.
Chairman, I have a question.
Thank you, Ms.
Does anybody on the board have a question?
Mr. Stallings, you mentioned there were 2 questions or a question you asked and got 2 different answers.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Do you remember the specific question? Maybe we can answer that here.
Yes, sir.
tonight.
Yes, sir. I called the first day and talked to Cameron. He said, it's 25 foot.
What's the specific question? Sorry to interrupt, Mr. Stallings. What's the specific question?
What is, okay, my question to him, what is the city's ordinance on the footage away from me you have to build? He said 25 foot.
The building setback
Yes, sir.
in the
When I
zone.
called Evan today, he was saying, well, it depends, it depends, it depends. And I told him what he said. And they said, well, it's 25 foot then. Since it's townhouses, they're gonna set it back 25 foot. So that is the building ordinance. I'm just asking you to go by the ordinance. I know they put in a special request. They don't even know what city they're in. They just told you that.
And Mr. Stallings, was that the only question, the specific? Was the setback item? will we need to resolve tonight? What
No,
is
the
the,
stormwater, it's not gonna be, how can you get from 10 feet, how are you gonna get the water down to the retention pond?
I understand that.
Look, I lived in a townhouse. I saw it all. The retention pond was behind our condo, okay? And then behind the fence, it was all dog poop. You couldn't even walk back there because people wouldn't clean up their poop. And that's gonna wind up in my backyard or front yard. No. These people have started out as bad neighbors, and that's where we're gonna go from here, okay?
Any other questions for
Any
Mr.
questions?
Stallings? Thank you, sir.
Thank you guys for listening.
Do you have any other persons who would like to speak? Please state your name and address for the record,
Steve
please.
Moser, 1101 Jeffrey Street. Actually, the property's in my daughter's name, Amber Murphy, Brittany Moody. This is the first I've seen the site plan. I mean, to me, it's like, this is going a little bit fast to be rezoning in November 12th. I didn't know things moved that fast. Like I say, this is the first time I've seen this. And I'm looking at it now, and they've got a concrete walk. Am I correct, on the right of the property? Pardon?
It's a sewer easement, underground sewer easement.
Okay, it says a concrete walk.
I think that's.
Sure.
That's existing, sir. That's already there. That concrete walk is already there. That's just noted by the surveyor, sir.
I live there. There's no concrete walk. There's no concrete walk.
Sir, are you talking about the 20-foot sewer easement?
Correct. Is that a proposed sewer easement?
Yes, sir. It is. So that is, this whole project is contingent upon this sewer easement, where they'll have to get, from the property owner, this easement to, be able to connect sewer throughout this whole development.
Okay, that's the first I've heard about that. The property actually goes across the concrete walk. The gravel driveway is part of 1101, 1105, 1103. That was one of my concerns there. I didn't know what that was. And I'm looking at it, and it looks like one access in, one access out, right in the corner, right behind Miss Two's house. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, my biggest concern is the traffic. We already have problems on Jeffrey Street and Hanover. And with 53 units, like you say, it's gonna be 200 people, 100 cars. It's gonna be an overload on Jeffrey Street for one thing. You've got the buses coming out at Cummings High School. This thing's going a little bit too fast to grass right now. See it zoned from industrial, what I-1, to get it changed so fast November 12th. I just got reservations until I get a little bit more educated on it.
Let me back up just for a moment. You were talking about a concrete walk. I see a concrete walk notated on the, and this was for you, Cameron.
Mhm.
What is that? There's also the sewer easement that's overlaid a gravel driveway.
Yes, sir.
What is the concrete walk there?
So I think
Is that,
somebody mentioned it over there. It's just something that was annotated on the overall survey that was done by the surveyor. I don't know if it's just like a little concrete walkway connecting one of the areas here to the gravel driveway. I wouldn't be able to answer that. I have to be on the developer side of things, but I think it's literally just one of the surveying aspects of it showing.
can I direct that to the engineer, please?
So this property was surveyed this summer roughly, and that's just something the surveyor picked up as they were doing that area. So It might not be there. Was it
No,
ever?
it's-
It was
it's
never
no
there?
blankety blank concrete walk there. My driveway's right there, so.
Okay.
That's what I'm,
Well,
that's what I didn't understand.
Um,
There is no access to the property from this point, from Jeffrey Street to here.
right,
The
right.
access is from, Hanover and the lot that you guys own right here.
Okay. So I think what we should do is visit the site and see if that concrete walk is not there, we can just remove it from the site plan. But it was a surveyed item, you know, from when their survey was done this summer. They may have, mistook
Right.
something for something, I don't know.
Apparently they did. I didn't look at it.
Yeah.
The sewer easement, I don't understand about that.
Yeah, I can speak to that, sorry. Yeah. So a couple things. There's a note right here in the general notes. So we had Brady go forth. Many of you may know him. He's a local surveyor. He did the survey let's see, where does it say? May 2nd, 2023. Do you think there's been any changes since that date of the concrete walk? And again, if it's something,
No concrete wall.
if it's something that's not there, then we can absolutely have that removed. So sorry
But
about
let me
that.
ask you this.
Yes, sir.
I'm still.
Please direct questions to the chair, to the board at this point, please.
I still don't understand the sewer assessment. You
All
can't
right,
just-
Cameron, can you address that, please?
Let me just speak to that. or-
So I may chime in and then they may be able to answer a little bit more.
Please.
But the only point of access, I guess, due to a flow and location wise for them to bring in sanitary sewer into their site is to extend the main from Jeffrey Street through the sanitary sewer easement. They would have to secure from the surrounding property owners in order to develop this project. I think this is the closest area that they would have to make a connection, and it is known by the city of Graham and everybody else around here that if it is not secure, the project essentially can't be built unless they can find another way that satisfies the technical review
Correct. That would
committee.
be impact number one. Impact number two would be the traffic on Jeffrey Street and how many cars. I think it needs to be an impact study that what somebody suggested up there. It
Yeah.
wasn't required, but I think should be.
I think Mr. Young addressed that. And
I asked for a traffic count. They haven't done one because they're not required to. I was just curious.
Well, yeah, and I mean, we got problems there now with speed. The road's a small road as it is.
Sometimes NCDOT can give us like projected traffic count through that area, and whatever it was during the technical review committee, it didn't meet the threshold. I mean, I can try and pull up on some old technical review committee notes and see if they made mention of it. But for whatever the number it was, it didn't trigger their TIA, and as I mentioned.
Going further, I can't stop progress. I know that, and I'm trying to work with everybody, but it's, you get that many people, they start cutting across here. I've already had problems with people stealing. Unless there's a 8-foot fence there, we're gonna have problems. I can see that as it is right now. That's one of my other concerns there. You're just getting a lot of people in that. And like I say, I'm open to any suggestions, but these are my concerns. Would be the traffic, the access to the sewer, and, the type of house, and I say townhouses. I mean, I hope it's more of a upper end townhouse.
board, gentlemen, do you have any questions?
Oh, sorry, back to the whole traffic count. NCDOT's comment on the first round of technical review committee was based on the information provided. The proposed site appears to consist of 53 townhome units, which would generate approximately 370 new daily trips upon build out. And they mentioned this does not meet the NCDOT threshold to require a TIA. But the city may have other requirements, but the city does not have anything inside of their development ordinance that requires a TIA for this project.
When did they do that?
This was in August. So I think they have a general metric based on the site area, number of units. They have an equation that I think estimates whatever it may be.
And does their appraiser figure, you know, if they're, I'm willing to bet that just on personal experience, there's gonna be probably 4 cars per dwelling. I mean, it's just maybe more, depending on how many kids they have. But, yeah, I was just wondering because I honestly, I think that both streets would have some impact, regardless of what the DOT's standard is.
Mhm.
Here's another stupid question. I'm gonna be famous for this. Do they have the sewage easement?
No, sir. But
Um,
that is a contingent, and I think it's one of the notes on the plans as well as that.
so,
Mr. Young,
sir,
sorry if I may add to
No,
that.
go
Is that
ahead.
Okay. We actually spoke with Brittany Moody today, and I apologize if you were not made aware. We spoke with her earlier, David did, and she is gonna contact her sister Amber Murphy, and we're gonna get with them later this week to discuss further access for the sewer easement. So we are in
but there's
contact.
no approval. You're just gonna.
No approval yet, but of course, this is contingent upon the site approval for us to have that. Yes, sir. But we are working towards that and hope to have more updates this week.
Any other questions?
Just one.
Go ahead.
Mr. Moser, and I think Brenda's already answered this, your affiliation with the Moody's and
I'm their father.
you're their, okay, so you just didn't know they were dealing with these folks for the sewer
I
easement?
just found out. I mean, it's like I say, this whole thing has come down.
Okay.
Got the notice a week and a half ago.
Do you have any ownership interest in Amber's or Brittany's property?
It's in Amber and Brittany's name.
I understand. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Wooten, may I speak to one other thing?
Go ahead.
I just wanted to note from earlier, so we are also planning on having a set of restrictive covenants in HOA for this neighborhood. So it's going to be held to a certain standard of what you can and cannot do. I know there was someone speaking about dog feces and a landscaping buffer. We do plan to have a landscape buffer with potential fencing, so those will be addressed.
Yeah, and that's one thing I would like about the buffer. Behind, I've got a cabinet shop that's gonna be 10 foot off or whatever it is back in the buildings with compressors and saws going. I don't wanna hear no complaints.
Which parcel is that?
1101, 1105, 1103,
What is that?
correct. If you look on this, it's a building.
Are they on
Yeah.
there?
Here's 1101 and 1105.
Get this one here.
Okay.
The shop is.
And the
right
shop
there
is where?
back.
I think it's back here in the back.
I think it is, it's zoned like B1.
Right.
There's 2 lots in there, B1.
B1 and B2.
I
Cameron,
think
I have a question for you.
Yes, sir. Shoot.
I remember what it was. Concerning the traffic count,
Yes, sir.
was there any discussion about the traffic count, including Cummins High School?
So that is all taken into account. I don't think it's specifically whenever NCDOT does their traffic count, it's for the use itself. And that use is then, I think, incorporated into an overall traffic count area for both of the roads, which may deem to require improvements. So it's essentially the more that you build, the more that gets to that threshold that requires additional requirements from the property owner, whether that be a left-hand turn lane in or widening the road, but it just doesn't meet that threshold. So whenever they did that calculation, it was solely based on the area that's being proposed, not adding into any of the surrounding aspects of it. But I'm sure there's a greater number that could be accounted for whenever this would be built, or if it were to be built.
Any other questions? Thank you, sir.
I mean, I would hope that this goes into consideration with the fence and the assessments before the zoning is changed. That's my concern.
Thank you very much. We,
Thank you.
yes, ma'am.
Is this gonna be low-income housing?
I'm,
No, it's not low income.
Pardon?
It is not Section 8 housing.
Okay. When will we know whether it's the 25-foot requirement from our property? I mean, you all have been investigating, I mean, we already think that's the law, but when will we know whether or not that's confirmed?
we're going to finish public hearing. Anyone who else wants to speak, and then we'll discuss it amongst ourselves. What?
You want, I can, so the November the 12th meeting will be the city council. I said the November the 12th meeting will be the city council meeting, where ultimately they will make a decision to whether approve or deny the project. The meeting here tonight is to make a recommendation based off what has been presented by the applicants, what has been heard from the board by you all, and they will make a recommendation to approve or deny made to city council. We can get into the whole 25-foot setback thing after the public hearing. And we can kind of discuss that amongst us and the individuals here, so we can kind of express where, I mean, I can answer that question right now if you really want me to, because
Yeah,
it's.
we'll
being
get
kind
to
of-
that in just a few moments.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. The way that we work this meeting is that we listen to anybody who has public comment. And then once that's done, we discuss it amongst ourselves, get as much information as we can. Then we make a recommendation, as Cameron said, to the city council, yea or nay. So this is just a recommendation from us.
Out of that spot. If these people go to work in the morning, they come out on Jeffrey Street. They're coming in front of my house to a stop sign. They probably can't all get out of their property because it's short, they'll be short up to that stop sign. They're coming out on Hanover Road, that's a busy road, so it's gonna be a problem for those people getting in and out of that property.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there anyone else that would like to speak to this issue? In the back, sir. If you would, please come to the podium, state your name, address for the record.
Gary Parker Holmes of 1109 Jeffrey Street, also representing Ameris May Holmes of 1103 Jeffrey Street,
1113?
1113, sorry.
Yes, sir.
My concerns go right alongside with my neighbors there. We're fixing to, if this is approved, we're gonna have a significant change in our lifestyle, which if approved, will probably drive me from a residence that has been in my family for 120 years. Progress is progress. 53 units, that's a lot. That's a lot in my backyard. My daughter lives next door. She'll be affected on two sides of it. Main concerns of both visual and auditory disruption. There's going to be a lot of noise, a lot of machinery for a considerable amount of time to put these up. Yeah, it would, I would be a little, if this were single family houses instead of townhomes, I would be a little more amenable to it, but 53 units, that's a lot of neighbors, a lot of noise, a big change. And that's all I'm gonna throw at you for my consideration.
Thank you. Just a moment, sir. Does anyone on the board have any questions? Questions?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Mr. Huffine,
Yes, sir.
are you sure you don't have anything to do with these people? You sure are smiling at this fellow right here. I saw,
I smile all the time.
no, you,
I'm gonna smile at you too.
okay. Well,
I've never met any of these four gentlemen, just like I've never met you.
no, I've never met you either. I just saw that and I just want to know what's going on.
Absolutely nothing that I'm not gonna say out loud, sir. I can assure you that. Mr. Chairman, I'm deflecting you, sir.
Thank you. I would suggest that you keep your comments relevant to the item at hand, sir.
Yes, sir. I got you. No problem. That was at hand, so,
I respect that. I understand that completely.
okay. You
Uh,
understand, you understand it, sir?
I understand it quite well, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak concerning this issue? I'd like to move that we close public hearing at this time. Here a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Like to enter into discussion amongst ourselves.
Mr. Chairman, can we get some clarification on that setback? Is it 25, 10?
I think now would be a good time for you to enlighten us with your wisdom, Mr. West.
I don't know if it's much wisdom, if anything else, but so I think the little bit of the confusion is the question was asked is like, whenever somebody was wanting to develop this without it being conditional, what is the setback requirement? And that setback requirement is defaulted to the RMF.
The property is currently zoned RG and I1.
Well, if you're
What
wanting
are
to
the current
develop,
setbacks?
if you're wanting to develop townhomes, essentially,
Let's do it in stages so that the citizens understand what the applicant is asking for.
okay, so in stages, the applicant makes a request for a conditional residential zoning classification, correct? The conditional residential zoning classification calls that if it is not specifically requested by the applicant, it defaults to the RMF zoning classification. That RMF zoning classification is a 25-foot setback from the rear, front, side, everything, 25 feet. That being on the surrounding property lines, that not being necessarily what the frontage of it is, even though I guess it could be considered in that regard. So essentially, you're looking at 25 from everything. The conditional residential district also states that the developer can ask for a decreased amount when you're making these, because as I mentioned to Mr. Stallings, these conditional residential requests are a handshake agreement between the applicant and whoever's hearing it, you all, the city council. That handshake agreement being they can request for a decrease of the setback going to the 15 that they are showing. So they are requesting a 15-foot or a 10-foot reduction from the outside property lines. And I think they're showing 25 from the front of Hanover and the front of Jeffries, but the interior lines abutting the houses are where it comes into the 15. And that is where essentially normally, according to what the conditional residential would require without the decrease that is requested, would be the 25. But since they requested the decrease on their zoning conditions, that is why is it not 25?
Public comment is closed, ma'am. Thank you. Discussion is among the board members right now. Question?
So the applicant is asking for a 15-foot rear setback, a 25-foot front setback, and I believe it was 12 feet building to building, so 6-foot sidelines.
Yes, sir.
So the applicant is requesting a 15, a 25, and a 6-foot.
Essentially, yes, sir.
So now we have the default, which is the 25 perimeter setback.
Mhm.
We have what the applicant is asking for in the conditions. Now we would like to tell the citizens what is the setback in the existing I-1 and the existing RG. So we'd need to look in the ordinance to see what those call for.
I don't know if that's really necessary to the specific request though, because it's not,
We're specifically looking for. a
you wouldn't be able to
rezoning.
build townhomes inside of this area as it currently listed due to the double zoning of the property. If they made the request to rezone it all to RG, then maybe we could have that discussion. I mean, I'm more than happy to pull it up, but I'm just kind of interested in the reasoning behind the question of what it would be that we're not discussing. So in the RG zoning district, where almost everything is approved, being a mobile home development, other things along those lines, if I can find it.
To request anything.
Ma'am,
Ma'am, I would ask that you remain silent. Public comment is closed at this point.
so you're still looking at the same kind of aspect, yard depth front for multifamily in the RG 25, side 15, for multifamily, it says C 10.247. Which is the same kind of thing that we're looking at in that RMF classification. It's just 25, 25, 25, 25.
Okay, and then what would it be for the I-1 district?
That one's a little bit interesting because you couldn't build townhomes in the I-1 zoning district, but
I'm not concerned about what the use is. I'm concerned about what the zoning ordinance says the zoning setbacks, the applicable
Yes, sir.
setbacks in the zone are.
yard depth front 50 feet, for buildings, parking areas, 10 feet, side yard, 50 feet for lot zone residential. Anything else other than residential would be 20 feet. And the rear would be 50 for anything residence or zone residential and 20 elsewhere.
So that's 50 to the building
Mhm.
and that's 10 to the parking.
Yes,
Okay.
for the front.
So now we've established that what the existing setbacks are if this was developed for an industrial use or if it was developed for general residential use. If a building, if there was no zoning request and the developer so decided to put a property line right down the split zoning line, they could develop RG, we could make whatever fits with the 25-foot setbacks. They could do an industrial development and they could put a building 50 feet off the property line. They could put a parking lot 10 feet off the property line.
The
There's-
front, yes, sir.
There's just been a lot of questions about how the setbacks are applicable in different situations, and I think it's fair to express what the existing zoning allows and what the conditional zoning what the applicant is asking for in the conditional zoning, so that there's a clear message from the planning board and from staff to the citizens, what is available to a developer now and what the conditional zoning request is. If the developer were to run a property line right down the split zoning line, they could build whatever they wanted to in RG, residential use, RMF included. If they developed an I-1, they could build an industrial building 50 feet off the line and a parking lot 10 feet off the front line.
They'd essentially have to get a special use permit, I believe as well, due to the roadway that would go through the RG zoning, but yes, you're still correct.
Because the I-1 portion is locked.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does everyone understand that? Okay, I think that helps with question 1 from the citizens to staff. The second one is buffering. So the current zoning, buffering an industrial use to a residential use, what would be the buffer width?
I believe it'd be the type A, but it really depends on what's existing out there. Like I said, I think this, everything residential wise, single family home to an industrial, you're saying, an industrial use, is gonna be that type A essentially.
And what's the width of the type A buffer?
I think it's 25 feet.
25 feet, I think is correct.
Okay, thank you, sir. I appreciate it. I'll look at it real quick. And it really depends on the land use classification as well. So no, excuse me. It's either type A or type B. Regardless, I mean, if it's a type A, it's a minimum width of 40, type B, 25,
So somewhere between 25 and 40 feet is a landscape buffer.
depending on the use, of course.
Okay. What is the buffer width from an RG to an RG?
It really depends on what the specific use is,
So the
right?
specific use of the citizens is single family,
Yeah, single family, there wouldn't be a residential buffer next
and
to
the
it.
proposed use would be multifamily.
And that would take into account the.
So that
this is
buffer
where-
width would then be a type D?
No, sir.
No.
No. So we're classifying this as the multifamily. That's a land use classification 3 against the land use classification 1, and I believe that is the type D, if I'm correct. Or not type D, type B, excuse me. Might be faster. So what did I say? Land use classification 3 to 1, the residential like the multifamily to the number 1 land use classification of the single family is that type B. That's where that 25 comes into play. So they're asking for the reduction from the 25 to the 10 feet.
Which is allowed due to the conditional.
That is something for
Condition.
you all to consider and city council to consider as well. But yes, sir, the part that's specifically listed inside of their list of conditions that they are requesting for the project as a whole. Yes, sir. That's the only reason that it is being brought up and was approved, is that it's specifically being asked as a part of the conditional rezoning process. Same thing for the setbacks. I apologize if I wasn't super clear on that, but it's essentially the same kind of concept.
All right, Mr. Chairman, a question for the applicant? Is that appropriate?
I-
Or do we have to reopen the public
Have to
hearing?
reopen the public comment at the time.
Okay.
Is there anything you think I may be able to help?
Yes.
let's see.
So given your knowledge of the review and the plan you've seen before you, it's safe to say that the applicant is challenged by double fronting or single fronting a public street. And the dimensions that are needed for a car to park in front of a garage and remain out of the sidewalk is a 20 to 25-foot distance. And in order to efficiently load a city street, you need houses on both sides of the street.
Mhm.
The only place there's any wiggle room is the perimeter buffer and setback.
Yes, sir.
So the developer and the engineer is faced with a specific task of trying to fit a lot in a little, or to try to make something, find some middle ground in some
Yes, sir.
way to make an efficient use of the street, an efficient use of the land, and leave as much perimeter yard as they can.
So there was a request during the technical review committee meeting to extend the front setback to, or I'll show it as up here, this front setback along the frontage from 15 to 20 due to the aspect that you were talking about fitting your cars inside of the property line itself and not inside the right of way. Also, with these types of developments, you see that they have a 2-car driveway and 1-car garage. In typical developments, it's only required per our ordinance to have 2 parking spots, 1 driveway, 1 garage. Not, of course, going about, but I guess the give and take aspect of the conditional rezoning. I don't know if I'm answering your question as a whole, but it's more or less just a statement that they're having to give up something to get something right. So, it's just whether or not what they're giving up is satisfactory enough for you all to move it forward. Am I answering whatever you're asking?
I think we wanted to express for the record the challenges that both the neighbors and the developer are faced with on this
Yes, sir.
particular piece of property. Secondly, was there any discussion between the developer and staff about the reduction of the public right-of-way width, or maybe the road width, to minimize the 50-foot, maybe to use a 45-foot right-of-way in a smaller street?
No, sir.
Okay. Is that
And
not an option?
it could be, but I think at the same time, I know it has been
We don't have a street, I'm sorry to interrupt, we
No,
don't have a
go ahead.
street smaller than 27.
Yes, sir, we do.
But
And-
we do have one smaller than 27?
Yes, sir. I think so. Let me make sure.
Because the 26 would be fire code, and I think that'd be as minimal as we could go. But I do see here that the developer and engineer have made a significant effort in trying to reach a narrow street section, 27 back to back, I believe.
So we allow for 24 back to back according to what's shown on the screen up here. But it is due to required TRC approval for the residential narrow. And that's 24 feet with curb and gutter. Without curb and gutter, I guess it's 20 feet essentially. Is that what it's kind of referring to? 47-foot right of way. So you're really giving and taking 3 feet essentially, right? So and I know not to, I guess, talk for them, but city council has definitely been adamant about the width of these roadways that are going through here as well. And I think that's another reason that we toted the applicant to kind of go with the medium if possible. But everything that we reviewed and looked at was based on the 27-foot back to curb and the 50-foot right of way. I think that's been kind of the industry standard for a lot of the subdivisions through here.
Just a couple more questions from the citizens to staff and to the board. There was a question about sound during construction, I would assume. And then I had extrapolated from that the hours of construction.
Mhm.
But typically, these jobs are worked from sunrise to sundown, and there's, a year's worth of construction, 2 years worth of construction, and
So we do have
that's how it goes.
something inside of the code of ordinance, I think, that restricts the time of construction. I can't remember if it's 8 o'clock start until 6 o'clock stop. It's somewhere in that time frame. And we have had issues with developers like starting before, cranking up their tractors, trying to get them hot. And we've had to get onto them and kind of, because we've received complaints. But it's as easy, I want to say it's as easy as calling up here and making those to get them kind of addressed. But we do have the requirements to violate or notice a violation for these types of things. Essentially, we won't really send a letter. I will call the developer, email the developer, like, listen, you have to do this. If not, we're going to have to take action, stop work order, et cetera. So.
Okay, and then some questions just for me for the technical review folks.
Mhm.
The Thompson property, which is to the south.
Yeah.
Where the proposed stormwater control measure is going to daylight. Was there any contact with that property owner? Have you heard anything from that property owner? There been any response to the mailings?
Are you talking about this area right here that I'm kind of highlighting?
Yes,
Mhm.
yes.
Any contact with them for what?
Have they
reason?
contacted the city with any questions as a response to the mailings they may or may not have received?
No, sir. I believe the only people that have reached out and talked to Evan and I are the people that are in attendance tonight.
Excellent, okay. Did staff and NCDOT look at units 1, 2, and 3 and their proximity to the connection of, I'm gonna call it Street A, the main stem street, to East Hanover, and the distance from Unit 1's driveway to the intersection with East Hanover? Typically, there's a 25, 50, and 100-foot distance between the first connection and the street, and I don't see how that scales out.
Yeah, I believe it was never noted, and it is more than 25 feet away. It's probably 30 feet from the start of the driveway, maybe a little bit more. NCDOT didn't seem to have any issues associated with it. Nothing was brought up on the engineering side of things either.
All right, and specifically attention to units 52 and 53 as well for the same concern.
Yes, sir.
And then was there any discussion at TRC over the intersection site distance from the intersection of Jeffries at East Hanover to what I'm gonna call Street B, the short stem street that runs from the west to the east?
So for 52 and 53, the same thing kind of comes into play. I think we have more than 30 feet on this side from the start of the driveway. And what was your second question? The site distance?
The distance from the intersection of what I'm gonna call Street B, the short street, and the intersection with Jeffrey Street and East Hanover.
We'll say it's, there wasn't any specific discussion or anything that was brought up.
Okay.
Based on what it looks like from this area over here, around 130 feet to where this line and this line meets from where the driveway starts.
And did this TRC meeting occur before or after September 15th of this year?
It occurred before. We had one in August, so they went through one in August, one in September, and then they made revisions that were addressing some of Josh and Randy's comments before they were put in the packet and sent out to you all.
Okay. Aside from the first items I had, I'll just submit that checklist to the chairman for the record so that staff can evaluate that correctly before it goes to city council, but I have nothing else, Chairman.
Quick question.
Go ahead, sir.
Open it up to the rest of the board. Has any discussion been made about lighting?
No, sir. None specifically. A lot of this is, and that would probably come along the aspect of the construction drawing process.
Okay.
And that's whether or not they do provide any type of lighting or not. And that may be something we take a look into as well, based on our lighting ordinance. I can't quite remember if it's required or not, based on some of these, but if they do have it, then we'll review it. Yes, sir. So it's more or less, I guess, for if they do have it or if they don't. If they do, then we'll look at it and base it to whatever the current ordinance requirements are, or if our ordinance does requirement, we'll require it during the construction drawing process.
Bailey? Questions? Coleman, Mr. Young, Mr. Stockard? Comments, questions, thoughts?
My thoughts, with these folks that have been there, what did that one gentleman say, over 100 years his family had been in that area?
Yes.
Well, it's just about finding balance, and, just because you can put 53 units in there doesn't mean that you should. With respect to your neighbors who have been here clearly longer than this project and will probably outlast the project. I just think it's an awful lot in that small area. Just trying to pack all those people in there, and it's too much. Too much in too little space.
Or anything further?
That's it.
Stockard?
Cameron, was, TRC looked at the inflow of traffic as far as garbage and recycling units going in and out and turnaround and so forth like that, and
Yes, sir. So that's what the hammer T at the end is for allow the trash truck to service 25, 26, come hit this, back up and go on out. So, and then they'll hit this strip, both sides. But yes, sir, both fire and public works are both on the technical review committee and assess that this is adequate enough for their trash trucks, everything else, and fire trucks.
Let me just make a few comments about this proposal. To me, it dots all the i's and crosses all the t's. It meets all the requirements according to our UDO, et cetera, met the TRC approval, et cetera, and so on and so on. But I've driven that area and looked at it very closely, and I'm in agreement with Mr. Young that it just seems like it doesn't fit the character of that area. I would ask that you refrain yourselves, please. It doesn't seem to fit the nature of that area, the history of that area. On the other hand, that area could use a little bit of revitalization. But at what expense? To me, it just seems like it's trying to put too much on too little property. And that's just my personal opinion. I can't say from a standpoint of legality or, anything else. It's just that's just my impression, gentlemen, just my impression. So. Is there any other comment at this point? Cameron, do you have anything further?
No, sir, not necessarily. Everything that's been presented to you all is provided in the staff report. UDO aspects, future land use plans has all been kind of presented to you all, so it's up to y'all to make a motion to recommend or deny. I only ask if you do make a recommendation that you associate it with the future land use statement, that we always kind of go through, whether it's consistent or not.
Right.
Based on the policies and overall land use area that we've described, so.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Recognized. Mr. Huffine?
Are we at any position as a board, I'm listening to what Jim says, are we at any position as a board to offer the balance, some suggestions?
Would you like me to answer that, Mr. Wood?
Go ahead.
You as the board can make recommendations for conditions, of course, if that's one of the questions that you're asking for, of a balance of what you all may see fit. I mean, not throwing any suggestions out, but I mean, I know it's typical in, some city council meetings, 5-foot opaque fencing surrounding all the property areas, or reducing the number of units down to adhere to whatever setbacks that you can meet, or have them meet a condition for an exact setback amount. But yeah, I think you all are definitely able to make a recommendation. I mean, it essentially would have to be to approve with the conditions that you are kind of looking for, or it's just a straight denial essentially. But I think that's how the route you'd have to take.
Let me answer
Thank
the
you.
question as well. Bearing in mind that this is a recommendation board, we do not say yay or nay as such. We make a recommendation to the city council, who has final authority in all of this. I would hasten to say that we have a responsibility not only to look at the legal aspects of it, but also the aesthetic aspects of it, the historical aspects of it, whatever you want to call it. We need to look at it from an overall perspective, not only from a developer's perspective, but also from the resident's perspective. Try to come up with a balanced approach, a balanced recommendation to the city council as to how they should best proceed. So at this point, I'm open and ready to hear any comments you might have to make. We'll call for a motion if someone would like to make one in a moment. But if you have any thoughts before we do that, I would gladly entertain them at this point. Bailey?
Well, I think we gotta, as the board, we have to find some kind of balance here. Seems that the general consensus of 53 is a bit bunched there. From what I'm hearing from the board as well as the residents there. And I think it's upon us to create a balance and make a recommendation there. That's all I want to say.
So, hi.
And just to be clear, my understanding, we would either have to approve with some conditions or a straight denial.
Right, no, we have three options, if I'm correct, Cameron. We can deny, we can approve as written, or we can approve with conditions.
Yes, sir. That is what is written on the statement of consistency. The recommendation and statement of consistency is exactly, it's either approval, conditions, or denial. Because you can't deny with conditions essentially. So, I mean, if y'all had any conditions that you all thought that would be beneficial to this project that you wanted to bounce around, we could certainly talk about it.
That's what I'm asking for at this point.
And Mr. Chairman, just in my opinion, one, I'm not qualified to redraw this thing, but, I mean, that's a big ask. If we approve this with conditions, my condition would be cut it in half. And that would be a start. Cause it's just, even that's a lot of, that's still, you look at how historically these are single family homes. And then the definitions changed over time and now, wow, we can get all those in that one spot. I think that's a lot of work to ask for them to go back. You know, my idea of balance, I would cut it in half. It's 5,000 square feet for a dog park. It's too small. If you figure all those people have a dog, Graham City ordinance, you can have 3 dogs.
I wish I knew that.
You can have 3 dogs. If you figure every one of those people had 3 dogs in the house, that's awful busy 5,000 square foot. And that's a lot of poop. And then maybe if they turn it into a dog park, might be a park. You know, there's a lot of ways they could lessen this, and I'd just, you know, cut it in half. But if they did cut it in half, there's a lot of things you could do that would enhance that property and probably please the surrounding neighbors. But that's a big ask, you know, to ask somebody to go back and redo everything. That would just be my opinion, is cut it in half.
I know we're closed. I just want to speak
Yes.
to you. I want to speak to you direct.
No.
No, you may not do that, ma'am. You may not do that. That is not allowed. Thank you.
You had all this discussion.
Ma'am, I'm going to ask you to,
People on my mouth.
no, ma'am, I'm going to ask you to leave if you don't control yourself. Cameron,
Yes, sir.
we need to ask her to leave.
Well, I'm fine with it. I was born in that house. I'm going to speak.
Ma'am, I am going to ask you to leave. If you cannot control your, please.
Nothing there was smarter than you are. They have at least got.
Ma'am, please leave now.
I have to.
If you have to, please do.
You in the wrong job.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for you and for staff.
Sure.
In the interest of time, does it save the developer or the applicant in this case, does it save them any time for us to consider a motion to table and return to planning board, or does it save them time for us to deny or approve and move on to city council? What is the chronology or the schedule that these gentlemen would face?
I think it would, I mean, if we table it, of course, it pushes them back to a December council meeting. again, I'm just, I don't know. I think we'd have to have a specific reasoning as to why we would look to table it. I just, I really don't know the answer to that. I don't know if there's a reason as it should be tabled tonight or whether it should be denied or recommended for approval. That's not my chance or not my.
I'm just asking the specific schedule. How,
Oh,
what is the
yeah.
time in process for the applicant if we approve, if we deny,
Mhm.
or if we ask them to come back to us?
So if they come back to you all, of course, they'll be back here on November 19th of next month. And that'll be a December, that's for the city council meeting, sir. So yeah, November 19th for planning board, that's the third Tuesday, and then December the 10th for city council. If they were to table it, if we were to make a decision tonight, it would go towards November 12th for city council. So that would, of course, extend a month, I guess, in their process.
They be subject to that. Is there a 6-month setback?
That is only if city council denies it. Yes, sir.
City council.
But city council could table it based on recommendations made for an updated plan to be brought back, I believe.
Gentlemen, at this time, if there's no other thoughts, questions, comments, I would entertain a motion as to the disposition of this issue. I'd like to make a motion.
And we don't have the ability to get feedback from the applicant, I guess. We would have to reopen we would have to reopen the public hearing to speak to the applicant again.
Yeah.
Okay.
That is completely up to you all. Of course, that brings into other public comment as well. Like I said, I mean, you know, I think we were on a good track there, in regards to thinking about potential alleviations that you all may be okay with to either recommend with conditions. I just, like I said, balls in y'all's court, in regards to the motion that you would like to make tonight.
Do you hear a motion that we reopen public comment?
I'd like to make a motion that we open public comment.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Public comments reopened.
Mr. Chairman, I have a
Anyone who would like to speak, please raise your hand. Please come to the podium.
Again, Vernon Wyatt, 3132 Brook Valley Court, Mebane, North Carolina. Thank you guys for being so patient tonight. I think we would really love to hear your feedback and really push this thing along just because our timelines, we've been dealing with what, 3 or 4 TRC meetings, Cameron, and it takes a long time and revisions take a long time and time is money. And so we really would love to hear your feedback and take that into consideration. And then we can go back with our engineer and make these changes to, you know, create a happy median for everybody and create a project that hopefully we're proud of and the city of Graham is proud of. So we'd love to hear your feedback and really try to stay on schedule if possible.
Thank you.
Thoughts to the developer at this point? What would you like to see different? You've already stated you'd like to see it in half. Any other thoughts or comments?
I think specifically, we would look at the perimeter setbacks of what the citizens would face without the conditional use. The horizontal dimensions just lend itself to a matter of efficiency for loading the street. And I totally appreciate the design and the effort that goes into it. Now that we've heard what the citizens would experience if the rezoning was or was not approved, if it was a condition or not a condition for setbacks and buffer yards. I think that's probably the most important thing that we've heard tonight. I've heard a lot about the size of the open space, and that's an ongoing concern in Graham. And so any additional open space that can be provided when some of the units are moved or reoriented to provide additional setbacks will certainly be welcome. I think the city council would certainly like to see those items. Comments on traffic. Cameron has alleviated my concerns that TRC has fully vetted all of the technical items. I will say that just off the cuff, trip generations for this project is 300 to 600 cars per day or trips per day, and that's well below what the traffic study thresholds are. the provisions for additional parking over and above. We all have, or have had kids and friends, and all the parking is beneficial. So I think taking into consideration reduction of the number of units to provide additional perimeter separation from the citizens that have definite justified concerns about noise and proximity and what they would experience if the development proceeded with its current zoning. I think that's what we should offer to the applicant to take forward.
I would be in agreement with that. I think it's my comment, my thoughts generally, I've already expressed, I think it's a little bit too much on too little land. I'd like to see the setbacks a little bit larger. Gentlemen, I understand the economics of the situation, but I also want to see a balance with the rest of Graham at this point. I think a good number fewer. I don't know that I'd go quite half, but I would like to see that number of units reduced to the point where you could get a reasonable buffer, like a setback, 25-foot setback would be a good thing. That would be being a good neighbor, would be perceived as being a good neighbor in a lot of ways. So that's my general thought to you. Specifics, I don't have any. I'm not an engineer, but I do have a sense of responsibility to the citizens of Graham at this point, as well as to you folks too. So we want to make sure that there's a good balance in there and not just all the boxes are checked off as they should be, et cetera, et cetera. There's a certain aesthetic that I would like personally. That's just me, not speaking for the board, just me. There's a certain aesthetic that I'd like to keep in Graham at this point. In that, if you understand what I'm saying. So, other comments?
Are we keeping the public comment open right now?
Public comment at this point is still open, yes. So,
Steve Moser, 1101 Jeffrey Street. You guys are waffling back and forth with the decision. I don't mean waffling, but you obviously want to maintain balance. And I don't want to see something rushed in. You guys take your time, get an intelligent decision, work with these guys and come up with a solution. That's all I'm asking.
yes, so that's what we're trying to do.
I didn't know. I thought you had to vote on it tonight or whatever you.
We will. We
Okay.
will definitely vote on it.
Like I say,
tonight.
I think it's rushing in with trying to make.
We want to make sure that everybody's concerns are heard, they're addressed, and to make sure that we get everybody into this picture, into this equation, sir.
You're not giving them time enough to come back to what they can do.
Well, we ain't done yet, sir. We ain't done yet. I saw another hand over here, sir. Again, come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening, Stephen Boone, 1027 Jeffrey Street. I'm the lead pastor of the Guiding Light Church here in Graham. I live in McLeansville, North Carolina. If you want me to state that address, I can as well. I will start off by saying like this. I love the idea. I love progression. Great thought, great plan. The only issue I have is right there on Jeffrey Street with that entrance. And because I spend a lot of time at my church, even though I work in Greensboro, throughout the week, I see a lot of traffic that comes through there, heavy traffic. And I know guys might pass it and say, well, that ain't nothing. But to the citizens and people like Mr. Moser, I mean, a lot of speed demons come through there like it's nothing. And I think putting that street right there on Jeffrey Street behind Miss Peggy's house might cause a real problem. So I think we should take that into consideration and maybe take that away. That's just my opinion. Now, I can't stop whatever the plan is, but I think that's a real problem.
And you're speaking of the
Right there.
the small T out to Jeffries.
Yes, sir. Right there. Right there.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Which parcel is your church?
My church is right across the street from the, what they call the, what is it, the concrete wall?
I see. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, are we directly asking the petitioner to pull this and bring it back to us with revisions, or are we going to make our recommendations? Where do we stand on this? Because
We haven't gotten to that point yet. That's what I'm asking you,
Alright.
gentlemen. Do you have conditions that you'd like to suggest at this point, specifics?
So would we close the public hearing?
We will in
Public
just,
comment.
we will in just a moment. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Gentlemen? Any further word? Mr. Wyatt?
Say one more thing. Sorry, it seems like there's some confusion. Are we making a vote tonight to then proceed with the city council meeting November 12th?
Tonight, we will make a vote in one of three cases, either denial, approval with condition, or just flat out approval.
Okay.
As it stands.
Thank you.
And that's what we're trying to get to at this point.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to keep the public hearing open. Do you have any conditions that you would like to express to the developers at this point? Specifics? If we approve it, if we make a motion with conditions, we need to have specifics.
All right, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Wyatt, are you guys prepared if we vote tonight with the conditions and just going with what I said was, cut it in half? Are you prepared to come back with those revisions or not?
We are prepared to make those revisions, and we anticipate to have those ready well before the council meeting for November 12th.
Yeah, I know sometimes, when you hear the public come out and speak, a lot of them, they speak with their feelings, because these people have lived there for a long time, and I hope, you listen to them and take that into consideration, because I think most of the people up here did, and that's what this is for. We let those people talk, but we do know what you want to do, and I can appreciate that, and I can appreciate the hard work that it took to get to this point. And I don't in any way want to hurt that or disrespect the work that you guys have put into it. I just think that we can find some kind of balance between the existing residents of that area and what you guys want to do. And in the long run, we'll all come out better.
Absolutely.
Can I insert a caveat?
Certainly.
In regards to, of course, and I've kind of harped on this as well, but the recommendation that you all make tonight, of course, will be forwarded along to city council. Just as a point of clarification, the applicant is not specifically required to take into account the recommendations that you have placed and change them ahead of the city council meeting. Just wanted to kind of get that out there, just so it's not specifically expected if y'all make a recommendation and the plan hasn't changed on the way to city council. That doesn't mean that city council won't take your recommendations into account and require them at their meeting, right? I just don't want to get anybody specifically like hopes up that this is going to be changed before the city council meeting. They may choose to do it, they may not, but I just wanted to insert that in there so nobody was confused.
Thank you.
That's correct. And it may be the city council decides to make their own changes in the conditions. So just so that you understand that,
Yes.
what we say here again is just a recommendation.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Gentlemen, conditions? If we don't have conditions, it cannot be approved with conditions.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Public hearing is still open. So go ahead.
Yeah, there again, David Wyatt, 3132 Brook Valley Court in Mebane. I just want to say, in trying to find the balance, I was born and raised here. I was raised on the northern part of the county on the tobacco farm. I was involved on that side of town, the Cum Park Plaza. Way back when, that was the side of town. We watched time change and things shift. But we take pride. I live here, been banking this community for 30 years. I want to be here. I want to do something good for the city of Graham, to offer a good product, and take pride in it when we ride by. All of us, my son is here. So we want to find that balance. And does that mean altering it? And that's where we're looking for that guidance and help. We wanted to be friendly for the neighborhood and them to be proud too. And we want to make harmonious, whatever that means, just to make it a good product for everybody. So just want to note that. We're taking a lot of pride in it. So, because I'm still going to be living here. Thank you.
Thank you. Gentlemen, if you have no specific conditions that you'd like to place
We need to close
before the,
we need to close the,
I know. That's what I'm getting to. You're way ahead of me, boss. Sorry. All right, and do I hear a motion that we close public hearing at this point?
Chairman, I'd like to make a motion, we close the public hearing.
Do you hear a
Second.
second?
I'll second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Public hearing is closed. All right, gentlemen. I'd entertain a motion, one way or the other, deny or to approve.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to deny the request for the conditional rezoning application.
And tie it to the staff recommendation, please.
I've got to find it.
Cameron, help if he needs help.
Specific to the policies that are listed, on the planning board recommendation on the very last sheet of the packet, essentially, let me make sure.
All right, I've got page 3 of 3 open.
That's correct.
So it's the applicable policies, policy 5.11, policy 3.33, 332, and strategy 4.31. And you can also talk about the overlying land use classification of industrial/warehousing as well.
I could certainly do that. I will go ahead and say I'd like to make a motion to deny conditional use rezoning request specific to policy 5.1.1 housing variety, policy 3.3.2 focused development, strategy 4.3.1 land use patterns. And also add to the motion that because of the schedule the developer has, this is the most efficient way for them to move forward.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Chair Ward, if you'd like to come back up to the podium and take over this.
I believe you all have to make a
We
motion.
need a motion for him to get back up here.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we bring our chairman back up to
Do
the
I hear a
board.
second?
Second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Come on back up, Mr. Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Williams.
It's all yours.
All right. Go to agenda item number 8, public comment on non-agenda items. Is there any public comment tonight on non-agenda items? All right, and does any board members have any non-agenda items they want to discuss?
None here.
Okay, and any staff comments?
No, sir, only that, believe the rezoning that was on the previous, docket at last month's planning board meeting was approved by city council and the annexation was approved as well. That's about the only thing that I have.
Thank you,
And I will work towards getting us something better next month on
Thank
the boarding house.
thank you. And I'll enter,
Chairman, can I follow up?
absolutely.
At that city council meeting, it was stated that she didn't show up for the second meeting because we sent the wrong date in an email.
So that one's a little difficult. So there was multiple dates that were thrown out and they can get a little bit confusing as you can kind of hear in the crowd in regards to the dates for planning board, the dates for city council, different times and everything. And it was just miscommunicated between both her and I in regards to the specific dates where she was meant to come. She was supposed to come to both of them. I think she came on a Wednesday instead of a Tuesday. Or a Monday instead of a Tuesday. So it must just been typed wrong on my end. So that was one of the reasons why. But I don't know if that excuses either one of us. So
Excuse me, the only other comment I'd have is congratulations to Mr. West on his
thank you,
recent
sir.
marriage.
Appreciate it.
Nothing further, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Thank you for trying to keep me on the straight and narrow there, Mr. Stocker. Little good that he did. Little good that he did. Oh, I gotta put my eyes back on.
Been a long time coming. All I have to get before we got married.
Welcome to hell with the rest of us.
I'm kidding.
Oh, you're good.
We lived together for over 3 years. Whenever I started
See,
working.
the only problem is either way on that street,
You got it.
because once you move over here.
So either way.
Right. I mean, honestly, the way I look at it, I get the sense of it right there because
You like
that
it better here than the other.
yeah, if it was me, but preferably, I wouldn't put it there either way. I'm kind of
You're
against it.
saying